Everyone sees the shine of fame, but few realize that behind every blinding spotlight, darkness waits in silence. Those who rise to the very top don't just receive admiration, they fight battles no one ever sees. Fame is not an endless red carpet. It's a double-edged sword, always hanging overhead. Behind the applause lie envy, betrayal, temptation, and dangers lurking in the shadows. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the lives of Black artists who stood tall while facing the cruelest storms the entertainment industry could unleash. What happened to them will shock you. These are truths buried for decades, rarely spoken aloud. The 19 stories you're about to hear may sound unbelievable, but every one of them is real. They expose the hidden side of Black celebrity behind the dazzling glow. You might question it at first, but stay with me. By the end, you'll never see the world of fame the same way again. Redd Foxx. Redd Foxx, the man whose razor-sharp, unapologetic humor reshaped American comedy, rose to legendary status through bold, fearless performances. Best known as Fred Sanford on Sanford and Son from 1972 to 1977, Foxx became one of Hollywood's greatest comedians by turning pain into punchlines. Working under the constant weight of racism, he used wit, nerve, and raw truth to make audiences laugh where others stayed silent. But the most unforgettable chapter of his life didn't happen on camera. Behind the scenes, Foxx pulled off a dark prank that stunned Hollywood and became whispered legend. In 1975, while filming Sanford and Son, Foxx and several co-stars, including LaWanda Page, decided they'd had enough of a notoriously cruel director. The man was infamous for belittling Black actors, lacing rehearsals with insults and arrogance. When a Black supporting actor from the cast died after battling depression, having endured relentless humiliation from that same director, Foxx snapped. The crew hatched a plan so outrageous it bordered on madness. Late one night, as the studio prepared for the next shoot, Foxx contacted a friend at a morgue and asked to borrow the body of the deceased actor. There was no family to claim him. Foxx brought the body to the studio. They dressed it up, sunglasses, a cigar, and placed it squarely in the director's chair, posed as if waiting. For extra flair, Foxx taped a small sign beside it reading, "Don't make me mad." A classic Sanford line. When the director arrived after midnight to inspect equipment, he saw the figure, froze, tripped backward, and screamed in terror, convinced the man had returned for revenge. Foxx and the crew erupted in laughter from the shadows. But the joke turned serious when the morgue reported the body missing. A lawsuit loomed. Using his industry pull, Foxx managed to calm producers and resolve the crisis quietly. The crew later ensured the actor received proper funeral arrangements. Though the stunt nearly exploded into scandal, Foxx always laughed when remembering it. The story became Hollywood folklore, proof of his fearless defiance against injustice. For Redd Foxx, laughter wasn't just entertainment. It was a razor-sharp weapon. And he was willing to turn all of Hollywood into his stage to teach arrogant men a lesson they'd never forget. Hattie McDaniel. Hattie McDaniel. An Oscar won, and an industry exposed. In 1940, Hattie McDaniel made history as the first Black actress to win an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her role as Mammy in Gone with the Wind. It should have been a moment of pure triumph. Instead, it revealed Hollywood's deepest cruelty. McDaniel rose through relentless racism to become a symbol of strength in a ruthless, segregated industry. But the night she won was steeped in heartbreak. The Academy Awards were held at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, a venue that enforced racial segregation. McDaniel was initially barred from attending altogether. Only after MGM intervened was she allowed inside, and even then, she was forbidden from sitting with her white co-stars. She was placed alone at a small table near the restrooms, far from the stage, invisible among the glittering crowd. By then, her fame was unquestionable. Yet Hollywood still refused to fully acknowledge a Black woman's presence in spaces reserved for the elite. When her name was announced, McDaniel walked through a sea of white faces, many staring with open disdain, to accept her Oscar. It was a victory wrapped in humiliation, an honor shadowed by isolation. The applause could not erase the sting of being segregated, nor the painful reality that servant roles were the only path offered to her talent. She faced criticism from parts of the Black community, accused of betraying her people by playing the mammy role. But McDaniel understood the brutal truth. In a racist system, this was her only door. After the ceremony, she was denied entry to the after-party and escorted out through the back door. She left that night holding an Oscar and carrying the bitter cost of making history. Ethel Waters, an unsolved theft on set and a fear that never truly disappeared. A legendary singer, actress, and television host, Waters was one of the first Black stars to shatter Hollywood's color barriers. With her aching, soulful voice and commanding screen presence, she became a symbol of endurance in an industry built to exclude her. She captivated audiences in films like Pinky, 1949, and earned admiration far beyond the screen. But behind the spotlight, Waters lived with a quiet, corrosive fear. During the filming of Pinky in Los Angeles, something unsettling happened. One day, her treasured jewelry, pearl rings and gold necklaces vanished from her dressing room. There were no broken locks, no forced entry, just absence. No suspect was ever named. No questions seemed urgent enough. Yet Waters was convinced the theft came from within the set itself. In a workplace already charged with racial tension, the violation felt personal. Fearing she was no longer safe, she demanded private security and refused to continue filming until the studio guaranteed her protection. A week later, the wound reopened. An anonymous package arrived containing a cheap ring and a chilling note. "You don't deserve that jewelry." The message struck deeper than the theft itself, an unmistakable reminder of the hostility simmering beneath Hollywood's polished surface. Waters kept the ring, not as a trinket, but as proof of what she endured. The mood on set shifted. Crew members recalled her guarded stare, her growing suspicion, as though anyone could be responsible. Few understood the isolation gnawing at her. She even began carrying a small knife in her purse, an act of quiet self-defense against threats no one could name. This was never just about stolen jewelry. It was about the silent cruelty of systemic racism that Black stars like Ethel Waters were forced to navigate. The case was forgotten. No one confessed. No one was caught. The mystery remained unsolved. But it changed her forever. Waters emerged more watchful, more hardened, no longer trusting Hollywood's promises of safety. That cheap ring became a symbol, a reminder that while the lights on stage burned bright, the shadows behind them were dangerous, and survival depended on her own vigilance. Paul Robeson, the man behind one of the FBI's most notorious blacklists. A towering, multifaceted artist and fearless civil rights activist, Robeson possessed a thunderous bass voice and delivered unforgettable performances, including his iconic role in Showboat, 1936. But his legacy reached far beyond music and film. Robeson spoke just as powerfully offstage. He championed workers' rights, condemned racism, and refused to soften his beliefs for anyone, making him a serious threat to the U.S. government. During the anti-communist hysteria of the 1950s, Robeson became a prime FBI target. They didn't just watch him. They erased him. Branded for his support of civil rights and perceived sympathy toward the Soviet Union, he was blacklisted. In 1951, the FBI revoked his passport, effectively trapping him inside the United States. Concerts were canceled en masse. Venues closed their doors. He lived under constant surveillance. Hidden microphones were planted in his dressing rooms and hotel suites. Every word, every step, every breath was monitored. To Robeson, it felt like a war with no ceasefire. Then came one of the most shocking moments in 1952. As Robeson prepared to perform at Harlem's legendary Apollo Theater, he discovered a concealed microphone behind a mirror in his dressing room. Fully aware he was being listened to, Robeson didn't retreat. He resisted. He leaned into the mic and thundered protest songs like Joe Hill, pouring defiance straight into the government's ears. When he finished, he smashed the microphone. FBI agents were stunned. Some reportedly called him untamable. Robeson kept a piece of the broken wire as a souvenir, joking it was the government's ear, a symbol of the surveillance meant to silence him. Instead, it hardened his resolve. Even as the FBI tightened its grip, Robeson kept performing, singing as if daring the entire power structure to stop him. When they blocked his path, he found detours. When they shut venues, he built outdoor stages. The blacklist was meant to destroy him, but it only turned Paul Robeson into something far greater, an unbreakable monument to resistance. Lena Horne. Lena Horne. The quiet war she fought with MGM. One of the first black stars to break into Hollywood, Lena dazzled the screen with her timeless elegance and a jazz voice that could stop a room cold. But behind the glamour, her rise came at a brutal cost. When she signed with MGM in 1942, she didn't just face racism from society, she faced it from the studio that claimed to believe in her. Her contract contained a clause so offensive it could only exist in that era. Horne was forbidden from appearing in major storylines. Instead, she was confined to isolated musical numbers, carefully designed so her scenes could be cut out for Southern theaters without affecting the film. She was visible, but never allowed to belong. The humiliation didn't end there. During the filming of Ziegfeld Follies in 1945, Lena was instructed to sing using a Southern accent, cast in a role that echoed servant stereotypes. Enraged, she refused. A fierce confrontation followed, and overnight, her courage labeled her difficult in MGM's eyes. Then came the final insult. Studio executives ordered her to wear makeup to lighten her skin, less black, they said, for audience comfort. That was the breaking point. Lena hurled her compact at the mirror, shattering it, and shouted, "I'm not your painting." She was suspended for a week, but she never apologized. That moment was more than rebellion. It was resistance. MGM eventually eased its grip, but the damage was done. Lena kept performing, draped in glamorous gowns, singing with unmatched grace. Yet behind her eyes burned a quiet fury. She wasn't just singing jazz, she was singing the rage, pain, and dignity of generations of black artists forced to bend for acceptance. And that voice? Hollywood could cut her scenes, but it could never silence her. Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier, staring death in the face on set. The first black actor to win the Academy Award for Best Actor, Poitier was more than a star. He was a symbol of courage in an era poisoned by racism. From Lilies of the Field to In the Heat of the Night, every role he chose was a declaration, a fearless challenge to America's racial divide. But his rise was never safe or glamorous. In 1967, while filming In the Heat of the Night in the Deep South, Poitier encountered not just professional pressure, but open terror. Hate mail from the Ku Klux Klan flooded in, demanding he leave town. One letter, scrawled in red ink and delivered with a blood-stained white cloth marked with the Klan symbol, carried a chilling message. Poitier refused to run. Despite the threats, he kept showing up, treating intimidation as just another obstacle. Then, one night after filming, as he drove back to his hotel, a gunshot shattered the silence. A bullet tore through his car window, missing his head by mere inches. Remarkably, Poitier stayed composed. Still, the crew assigned him armed protection. He rejected it. Poitier insisted on driving alone through dark, isolated roads, his quiet act of defiance against fear. After the attack, he sent the Klan's letter to newspapers, exposing the hate publicly. Authorities intervened, and the threats stopped. That near-death moment didn't weaken him. It hardened his legacy. Every step forward, Sidney Poitier wasn't just fighting for his career, he was fighting for his life, and for generations of Black Americans searching for dignity, justice, and freedom. Sammy Davis Jr., the accident that took his eye, and the fight to protect his image. A singular force of talent, Sammy Davis Jr. could sing, dance, and act with effortless brilliance. As a core member of the Rat Pack, he stood among Hollywood's brightest stars, confronting racism head-on while battling the relentless pressure to appear flawless. Everything changed in 1954. While driving from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, a devastating car crash nearly claimed his life and cost him his left eye. The trauma was unimaginable, but Sammy Davis Jr. refused to be defined by it. Instead of retreating, he transformed tragedy into strength. A custom $3,000 prosthetic eye, eerily lifelike, became part of him, allowing him to return to the spotlight with pride. Then came the moment that changed how he faced the world. After accidentally bumping into a table, the prosthetic eye dislodged and rolled across the floor. From that day forward, Davis never appeared without his signature glasses, even in private. Carefully designed with a discreet notch to secure the eye, they became his armor. Fans admired the cool, iconic look, unaware it concealed deep pain and vulnerability. At a Las Vegas party, a drunken fan tried to rip the glasses from his face. Sammy erupted, storming out in fury. That was when everyone understood the glasses weren't fashion. They were identity, a shield guarding the image he had fought to build. Sammy Davis Jr. may have lost an eye, but he never lost his fire. Through hardship and loss, he remained unstoppable, proving that even the deepest wounds can become a source of enduring power and undeniable shine. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge, the symbol of elegance, talent, and a cruelly humiliating past. A radiant Hollywood trailblazer, she became the first Black actress ever nominated for a Best Actress Oscar, her beauty and brilliance shining in an industry steeped in racism. On screen, she embodied grace and strength, but beyond the spotlight, her reality was far harsher. In 1955, while headlining at a luxury Las Vegas hotel, Dandridge was forbidden from using the hotel pool solely because of her race. The humiliation deepened when she briefly touched the water to retrieve a child's ball. The manager immediately ordered the pool drained, declaring it contaminated. Stunned and devastated, Dandridge was stripped of a basic dignity any star should have had. Days later, an anonymous box appeared outside her door. Inside sat a bottle labeled clean pool water. She demanded answers, but management dismissed the incident and buried the truth. Dandridge kept that bottle in her dressing room, a silent reminder of the hatred she endured daily. Still, she stepped on stage with remarkable professionalism, pouring her pain into performances like Carmen Jones. The audience heard triumph, but beneath it all, those invisible wounds slowly hollowed her out. Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday, the jazz queen shadowed by whispers of voodoo dolls and eerie curses. With a voice drenched in raw pain and fragile beauty, Billie Holiday captivated the world through haunting classics like Strange Fruit and God Bless the Child. She wasn't just a legend, she was a survivor. Battling racism, addiction, and violent relationships, she poured her suffering into music that still echoes through time. But behind the spotlight and smoky stages, Holiday harbored a chilling fascination few ever knew about. She secretly collected voodoo dolls, small figures of wood and cloth that she believed carried protective power. To Billie, they brought luck and shielded her from dark forces. She kept them locked away, revealing them only to trusted friends like Ella Fitzgerald. Then came the incident that fueled the legend. In 1956, during a performance at a Chicago nightclub, a voodoo doll was discovered in Holiday's dressing room, this time with a pin driven straight into its chest. The discovery sent shockwaves through the venue. Rumors exploded, claiming Billie was using the dolls to curse her enemies. Was it belief or mischief? Holiday brushed it off with her trademark half-smile, calling it a joke meant to unsettle curious onlookers. But few were convinced. Friends later claimed she whispered to the dolls before stepping on stage, as if performing a private ritual to summon energy from somewhere unseen. After her death, the locked box holding more than a dozen dolls vanished without explanation. Stranger still, one friend swore they later spotted a doll identical to Billie's favorite inside a New Orleans occult shop, waiting, silently, as if its story wasn't finished yet. Count Basie, the master of cool, and the mind behind one of jazz's boldest pranks. A true legend and the founder of the Count Basie Orchestra, he helped swing jazz to its absolute peak, forever linking his name to classics like 1 O'Clock Jump. But Basie's greatness wasn't just measured in music. It also lived in how he handled disrespect. To the public, Basie was calm, almost unbothered. Yet beneath that smooth exterior burned a sharp, wildly inventive spirit, especially when it came to payback. In 1948, at a Harlem party, Basie and his band pulled off a stunt that instantly became jazz folklore. The target was a powerful producer who had insulted Basie's band, sneering that they were savages, while still trying to profit from their talent. Basie took it personally, and decided revenge would be served with style. He hired an actor to pose as a mannequin, standing frozen in a corner like a lifeless figure, face painted ghostly white. When the producer arrived, he was welcomed politely, completely unaware he'd walked into a trap. Then, without warning, the mannequin sprang to life, screaming and lunging forward. Pandemonium exploded. The producer, shaken to his core, crashed into a table and bolted from the party in pure terror. Basie had thought of everything. The lighting was carefully arranged to cast an eerie glow, making the mannequin appear to shimmer in the smoky haze. The prank was so effective that the producer refused to work with Basie for years. Yet within jazz circles, the story lived on, retold with roaring laughter as proof that even the quietest legends know exactly how to strike back. Diahann Carroll. Diahann Carroll, a trailblazing icon of beauty and talent, made history as the first black woman to lead a television series with Julia in 1968, a groundbreaking moment in entertainment. But behind the spotlight and applause, Carroll faced a far darker reality lurking within the industry. Just 1 hour before the final shoot of Julia in New York, she received a phone call from a man claiming to be an assistant director. He told her there was a last-minute scene to film and instructed her to meet him at a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It sounded routine, and trusting the production's professionalism, Carroll agreed. When she arrived, the warehouse was disturbingly silent. No lights. No crew. Just one unfamiliar man. The moment she stepped inside, he tried to lock the door behind her. Panic set in. She screamed, realizing she was completely alone. By sheer luck, nearby construction workers heard her cries and rushed in, saving her from what could have been a nightmare. Police later discovered an abandoned camera inside the warehouse, its film roll empty, set up as if waiting just for her. Though shaken, Carroll refused to let fear control her. She kept the camera in her office as a grim reminder of the dangers of show business. From then on, she demanded strict ID checks on set and even carried a bottle of perfume for self-defense. The case was never fully solved. The man later claimed he was only an obsessed fan. But whatever the truth, the incident exposed the chilling threats Diahann Carroll and many other black stars quietly endured behind the glamour of Hollywood. Harry Belafonte. Harry Belafonte. A name etched into music, film, and the fight for justice. More than a 1950s superstar, he was a symbol of equality, an artist who shattered barriers with songs like Day-O and commanding performances in Carmen Jones. But Belafonte didn't just entertain America. He challenged it. And for that courage, he paid a terrifying price. By 1959, as Belafonte plunged deeper into the civil rights movement, a flood of threats began arriving at his New York home and at hotels across the country. From Chicago to Atlanta, the messages followed him. These weren't ordinary hate letters. They were written in animal blood, deliberately grotesque, meant to terrorize. Each demanded he abandon the fight for racial equality. Belafonte refused. The intimidation escalated. Some envelopes arrived stuffed with human hair, triggering the chilling fear that his family was being watched. These were no longer idle threats. They were warnings. Yet he would not retreat. He hired protection for his loved ones and stored every letter in a locked iron box, preserving a brutal archive of hatred aimed at silencing him. Then, in a stunning act of defiance, Belafonte did the unthinkable. On stage in the South, he read some of the letters aloud to the audience, turning threats into testimony, fear into confrontation. The hatred meant to break him only hardened his resolve. In the end, the letters failed. The boycotts failed. The threats failed. Each menace only pushed Harry Belafonte to speak louder, stand firmer, and fight harder, transforming terror into strength and fear into fuel for justice. Sam Cooke, the sole legend behind A Change Is Gonna Come and You Send Me, was more than a velvet-voiced hitmaker. He was a fearless survivor who dared to stand up to the darkest forces of his era. As one of the first black artists to own his own record label, Cooke was rewriting the rules of the music industry. But in 1962, at the peak of his fame, danger crept in from the shadows. The Chicago Mafia, a ruthless underworld power, began pressuring Cooke to pay protection money for his club appearances. When he refused, the threats escalated, venues were vandalized, stages destroyed, and his life openly menaced. Cook knew a direct confrontation could be fatal, so he chose something bolder: disappearing. In a daring move, he staged a violent car crash on the outskirts of Chicago. A stunt double wearing Cook's clothes slammed his car into a wall, leaving behind twisted metal, blood-stained belongings, and a critically injured man rushed away by ambulance. Within hours, whispers spread, Sam Cooke was dead. The ruse worked. Convinced their target was gone, the mafia backed off. Behind the scenes, Cooke hid in a small hotel under a false name, completely off the radar. Every detail was calculated: his watch, his jacket, soaked in blood and left at the scene. Some mob figures even sent flowers to his office, mocking the man they believed had defied them to the grave. A month later, after police raids dismantled key mafia players, Cooke quietly resurfaced. Fans were stunned. He never spoke publicly about the stunt, taking the secret with him until his real death in 1964, when the truth finally emerged. Sam Cooke's fake death wasn't just an act of desperation. It was a bold display of intelligence, courage, and survival. It also exposed the brutal reality faced by independent black artists of the time, where success came with danger, and freedom had a price few could afford to pay. Lionel Hampton. Lionel Hampton and his obsession with the sound of chainsaws. A towering jazz legend and virtuosic vibraphonist, Hampton embodied pure creative freedom. His explosive melodies electrified the world's biggest stages, and his band became a launchpad for generations of artists, leaving an indelible mark on jazz from the 1930s and 40s. Yet behind the brilliance was a strange fascination few ever knew about: his fixation on the roar of chainsaws. To Hampton, the brutal noise of construction sites wasn't chaos. It was rhythm. He began recording chainsaws, convinced their raw, mechanical grind carried a primal beat no instrument could replicate. Those recordings were kept hidden in a drawer at his New York home. Night after night, he would play them back, absorbing the piercing buzz as if tuning into a cosmic pulse only he could hear. In 1955, during a performance in Chicago, Hampton shocked the crowd by walking on stage with a small chainsaw. He treated it like an instrument, coaxing harsh, unsettling sounds that sent chills through the audience, and even his own band. Later, he hung the chainsaw in his studio, a trophy of fearless experimentation. Once, he even mailed a chainsaw sound remix to a producer who rejected it with a polite note, too far ahead of its time. Bandmates swore Hampton didn't just listen to chainsaws, he communed with them as if they possessed spirit and energy. Those abrasive tones became inseparable from his creative process. In embracing the most unlikely sounds, Lionel Hampton proved his artistry knew no limits, carving freedom out of noise in a world desperate for order. Eartha Kitt was more than a sultry voice or the unforgettable Catwoman of Batman, 1966. She was a force, bold, brilliant, and unafraid to speak truth to power. In 1968, that courage cost her everything. What was meant to be a polite White House dinner on youth issues turned into a moment that stunned the nation. When asked about politics, Kitt didn't soften her words. She openly condemned the Vietnam War, calling it the root of America's youth unrest. The room froze. Within minutes, the atmosphere turned icy, and she was quietly ushered out, met with glares sharp enough to cut. The consequences were swift and brutal. Despite her worldwide fame, Kitt was branded a national security threat. She was blacklisted from U.S. venues, erased from public life, and forced into years of exile in Europe. But the intimidation didn't stop there. While performing in London, an anonymous letter arrived at her hotel, warning her to stay silent or vanish forever. Kitt refused to be frightened. Instead, she smiled. Her signature song Santa Baby took on a new edge, dripping with irony, a message that those who tried to silence her would never collect their reward. Stripped of her homeland but not her voice, Eartha Kitt proved that truth travels farther than fear. She never apologized, never backed down, and never stopped standing for what she believed was right. Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor, the man who survived one of the most horrifying self-inflicted incidents in Hollywood history. A legendary comedian, Pryor was celebrated for his razor-sharp stand-up and unforgettable films like Stir Crazy, 1980, reshaping comedy with brutal honesty and fearless wit. Yet behind the laughter was a life scarred by addiction, inner torment, and relentless pain. One night in June 1980, that darkness erupted at Pryor's Los Angeles home. High on drugs, he poured liquor over his body and set himself on fire, flames consuming him as he ran into the street in terror. Neighbors and police watched in shock as he burned. Pryor survived, but only after months in the hospital, enduring agonizing treatment for severe burns. Amazingly, Pryor refused to hide from the incident. Instead, he transformed it into comedy. On stage, he retold the event with chilling detail and dark humor, making audiences laugh while sending a shiver down their spines. He later claimed it was an accident caused by spilled liquor, but those closest to him believed it reflected a breaking point fueled by depression and addiction. Pryor kept a scorched piece of clothing from that night, sealed in a glass frame, a permanent reminder of how close he came to death. He didn't just survive physically, he survived spiritually. His story became proof of his brutal honesty and unmatched resilience. Richard Pryor showed the world that even in the face of death, laughter could be the most powerful weapon against life's darkest demons. Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix. Mysterious pills and a death that still raises questions. A guitar god and one of the most influential artists of the 20th century, Hendrix revolutionized music with his raw, explosive sound. Tracks like Purple Haze and All Along the Watchtower sealed his place in rock history. Yet just as his legend reached its peak, his life ended abruptly at 27, leaving behind a mystery that refuses to fade. On a cold, rain-soaked night, September 18, 1970, Hendrix was found unconscious in a London apartment, dead from a barbiturate overdose. Toxicology reports revealed drug levels nearly 10 times the recommended amount. But how does a man known for excess, control, and creative fire accidentally consume such a lethal dose? His girlfriend, Monica Danman, insisted he had taken only a few sleeping pills to unwind, but her account left many unconvinced. A blood-stained handkerchief discovered near his body, with no clear explanation, fueled rumors that someone else may have been present that night. Even more unsettling, Hendrix had recently told friends he felt watched. In his pocket was a chilling poem about death, words so haunting they seemed almost prophetic. Was he crushed by fame, isolation, and the dark machinery of the music industry? Or was his death something far more sinister, an accident or a carefully hidden crime? We may never know. But one truth remains. Jimi Hendrix's death left a wound in music history that time can never heal. Nina Simone. Nina Simone. A shattered mirror and an obsession born from struggle. Nina Simone was a musical legend, a voice that could shake the soul with songs like Feeling Good and Mississippi Goddamn. Beyond her brilliance on stage, she was a fearless civil rights activist, standing boldly against injustice when silence was safer. But behind the applause, Simone carried deep psychological wounds, shaped by relentless racism and years of scorn. Out of that pain grew a haunting habit, collecting broken pieces of mirrors. These weren't random shards. Each fragment came from places scarred by hatred, vandalized stages, destroyed dressing rooms, spaces where racism had left its mark. She kept them in an ornate wooden box, believing every piece carried the memory of her generation's struggle. In 1970, after a performance in France, Simone stunned the audience. She raised a blood-stained shard of glass and called it the shattered truth of Black people, a raw symbol of pain, survival, and resistance. The crowd froze. Some erupted in applause. Others recoiled, as if the mirror reflected their own battles in an unjust world. The story didn't end there. Friends said Simone would sit alone, staring into those fragments, searching for meaning. She once confessed they kept her fire for civil rights alive, that only by confronting broken truths could real change begin. Every shard, every painful memory, became part of her lifelong fight against an unfair society. Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle, gunned down in a brutal daytime assassination. A rapper, entrepreneur, and respected community activist, Nipsey made waves with acclaimed mixtapes like Crenshaw and his Grammy-nominated album Victory Lap. But he was more than music. He was a visionary determined to rebuild South Los Angeles from the inside out, opening a clothing store, investing in education, and standing firmly against gang violence in his own neighborhood. Tragically, on March 31, 2019, just as his influence reached its peak, Nipsey was shot and killed outside his own store. A death that sent shockwaves around the world. That morning, in the neighborhood he never abandoned, Nipsey stood outside the Marathon clothing store, a place where he worked daily to inspire and uplift local youth. Suddenly, a familiar figure approached. Eric Holder, an old acquaintance. In a matter of seconds, everything changed. Gunshots shattered the air. Bullets tore through Nipsey in broad daylight, in front of dozens of stunned witnesses. People froze in disbelief as a man devoted to peace and progress fell on the very street he fought to protect. The assassination was more than a murder, it was a devastating blow to hope. 1 week earlier, Nipsey had received a chilling anonymous message: "Your enemies are closer than you think." The message wasn't discovered until after his death, found on his phone by family members. Who sent it? Why didn't he warn anyone? Was it a threat from those who felt endangered by his growing influence? Many believe his death was tied to the power he held, a threat to local gangs and long-standing street politics. Holder, the shooter, later claimed it was merely a personal dispute. But one strange detail remains. A Marathon Continues t-shirt, an iconic symbol of Nipsey's brand, was found in a nearby alley, stained with blood that belonged to neither the victim nor the killer. Whose blood was it? Was there a third person involved? No one knows. The case closed, but the questions never did. Nipsey Hussle's death remains a haunting reminder of the pressure, conflict, and danger faced by those trying to bring change to broken communities. These stories are like deep cuts behind the velvet curtain we call fame. Behind every applause, every award, every spotlight. Many have sacrificed their peace and even their lives to protect their voices and their dreams. If this story shocked you, leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to uncover more hidden truths behind the spotlight. There are still many strange stories waiting to be told.